Again, welcome to you for coming today, and welcome to you who have been with us on the live stream. I'm not sure you actually ever thought about this before, but this has been tried and true for a long, long time, is that we are hardwired to follow. I don't know if you've ever put that together, but inside of us, there's this deeply seated desire to follow. Whether it's when you're a little kid and you want to follow your hero who's an airline pilot, or as you grow up, the coolest kid on campus, or to follow your favorite sports hero, or to follow maybe your favorite actor or actress, ultimately later to follow a .com founder, whoever it is you follow. Maybe it's a neighbor. Often when I'm walking, we live kind of around here, and I take walks sometimes, and people often ask me, hey, you work out? So see, there you go. It's just a matter of, it's not that funny. On the web, they can't tell, okay? Well, that's what's interesting about that is I'm hardwired to follow. I get that too. Because growing up, this really somehow tapped into me when my parents were fans of this movie and this song in a movie that we watched every year at a certain season. And this movie highlights this one song that they sing at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie. And every time we'd see this as a family, we'd sit there and watch and cry. It was so great that as Dee and I met and then started having kids, we'd watch it every year. And every time it'd come on, we'd sit around there and say, oh, this is so great, this song right here. And just sit there and weep and cry. It's from a movie called White Christmas. I don't know how many of you have seen it. It may be your second favorite after Muppets, Christmas Carol, not really sure for your family. But White Christmas, spoiler alert, if you've not seen it, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this, is it's all about following this guy who's a general in World War II, who everyone loved. And they're in the battlefield, and it's Christmas Eve, so they're having kind of a little get-together because it's Christmas Eve, and they're singing songs, and they're having this great little time. And the general was being called back to the Pentagon, and he wasn't able to be at this kind of party. So the captain, who was played by Bing Crosby, said, too bad General Waverly couldn't be here with us. We wanted to give him a slam bam finish. And he shows up. He goes up there and tells these guys, I am going back to the Pentagon, and the new general, you better do what he says because you guys are a sloppy bunch. And he starts to get kind of choked up. And then he turns and says, how do I get off the stage? And here comes this song. So we'd have our kids there, and we'd just sit there and sing and hear this song, both at the beginning and the end of the movie. Those of you that have not seen it, here you go. For those of you that have, grab a hanky.
Don't just stand there. How do I get off?
Just happen to have a slam bang finish, sir.
Yes, sir.
We'll follow the old man wherever he wants to go, as long as he wants to go, opposite to the foe. We'll stay with the old man wherever he wants to stay, as long as he stays away from the battle's fray. Because we love him, and especially when he keeps us on the wall. And we'll tell the kiddies we answer duties all, with the grandest son of the soldier of them all. Stay with the old man wherever he wants to stay, as long as he stays away from the battle's fray. Because we love him, and especially when he keeps us on the ball. And we'll tell the kiddies we answer duties all, with the grandest son of a soldier of them all.
What a great song. Oh, my gosh, because we love him, and we'll follow him anywhere. Boy, for all these years, it's been one of those movies at Christmas time. Just, please watch it with me, please. The kids would come around. And now the grandkids are starting to get him into it. Loved it all these years. And then a couple of years ago, our kids made the mistake of becoming adults. And when they became adults, I don't remember which one of the three, but I'm going to throw them all three under the bus because one of them said, finally they called me out and go, Dad, come on. Have you ever listened to the words of that song? And I'm thinking, oh no. And sure enough, they shared the words of the song with me. They'd heard it their whole life. And here's the words of the song. will follow the old man wherever he wants to go, so long as he wants to go opposite to the foe. We'll stay with the old man wherever he wants to stay, as long as he stays away from the battle fray, because we love him. Oh, we love him, especially when he keeps us on the go. We tell the kiddies we answer duty's call with the grandest son of a soldier of them all, unless he leads us into battle. I mean, it completely ruined the song for me. I hate the movie now. Unbelievable. Because we love him, I'll follow him anywhere, unless it gets hard, unless it's difficult, unless it's painful. Great. Why did Irving Berlin write the lyrics to that? And for a long time, I had no idea that he'd snuck that into that great movie. Well, that's what's interesting about this idea of following, is following someone. We always are looking out for ourselves while we follow. No matter who it is we follow, we have this hard wiring to want to follow. But we also know and have been well trained in this culture to somehow want to forge our own path, to make our own way, to be in charge of our destiny. And we're actually taught that from an early age. Our job is to make our own way. We may follow a few along the way, but we really think we're supposed to kind of do it our own. And yet, deep inside of us, we know we're designed to follow. For the last month or so, we've been engaged in this kind of experience together called Branches. Many of you are doing that, and we'll be offering it for those of you online, eventually online as well. But it's been kind of cool and exciting to say, what does it mean to take Jesus seriously? What does it actually mean? We show up to church, we watch online, we look at our Bibles, we're involved in ministry, whatever it is we do, what does that really mean for us? And so we've looked at, well, it begins with wanting to know Jesus Christ. It's a few weeks ago. And you can look online to see some of these old sermons if you're interested in these things. But to know him ultimately is not to know about him, but it's to open ourselves up to an intimate relationship with the God who created us. To know him is to walk with him, to be his, for him to be mine, to be in this kind of connected relationship. And then the next week is, as we know him, we are called and invited to trust him. And the metaphor we used a couple of weeks ago was an actual event where a guy, a tightrope walker, walked across Niagara Falls over 100 years ago. And he took this wheelbarrow back and forth across, and the crowds were there, and they all shouted and screamed, "Oh, you're so great." And he goes, "Do you believe that I can take this wheelbarrow across Niagara Falls again?" And they'll go, "Yes, we believe." Then he said, "Do you have faith I can do it?" They yelled, "Yay, of course we believe. We have faith in you." And then he says, "Okay, I need a volunteer to get in the wheelbarrow." And he didn't get any takers, because it's one thing to say we believe and kind of have faith on the surface, but to trust him. It's really the heart of this whole thing, is we come to trust in him. And the last week we talked about, but there's a deeper dimension to all of our lives that we often ignore and deny. We keep so busy and so kind of living our lives on the surface that rarely do we allow ourselves to tap into the depth of the mystery and beauty of the life God has given us. And so I invited you guys, if you were here last week, to try to establish, to try to identify, where's your wow? Where does your heart just sing? And that is where we, as the psalmist writes in Psalm 42, our deep cries out to deep, where the affect, the fullness of knowing, of trusting, but then of loving this one is not just a loving by duty. It's not doing Christianity. Relatively meaningless. It's loving this one from the depth of who we are. But then it all comes together in this idea of follow, and that's the scripture we're going to be reading today. There's a lot of choices we could make, because it's talked about throughout the whole Bible. We're going to look at Luke 9, 3 little verses, 23 to 25 in Luke 9, and then switch over a few pages to Luke 14, verses 25 to 31. What does it mean actually to pull us all together and follow him? So if you're able, I invite you to stand with us. for the reading of God's Word, starting with Luke chapter 9, verse 23. Jesus said to those who were with him, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self?" Going over to Luke 14, just a few pages later, we read in Luke 14, starting to verse 25, large crowds were traveling with Jesus, these huge entourage of people wanting to follow him and be close to him. So Jesus turned to them and he said, verse 26, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Wouldn't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and aren't able to finish it, everyone who sees you will ridicule you, saying, 'This person began to build and wasn't able to finish.' Or suppose a king's about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he's able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming with 20,000? If he's not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciple." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God indeed. It's good news. Have a seat. May not sound like it kind of off the bat. It sounds like, oh man, all of a sudden the bar has been raised even more. Okay, to know him, open my heart up a little bit. Okay, I can maybe go there. To trust him. Okay, I'll try to figure out what does it mean to trust him. That means I guess I trust him with my friends or my future. I trust him with my finances or my family or my career. I trust him with my business. I trust him with my dreams. And so what that is we take all of those things that are ours and we say, okay, I trust you, God, now fix all our stuff, my stuff. So often our trust is still on our terms. And then to love him, that's maybe a whole new way of thinking for some of us, is to open up that deep space, to find the place of wow. But now it all comes together. It's not like something that's so radically different. It's actually the culmination of knowing, of trusting, of loving Jesus is to follow him. It's the culmination. There's a couple of things we need to look at as we do. You know this, if you ever take a look at this Bible and you understand anything of the story of Jesus as he walked the earth, but the call, it begins with a call. See, following Jesus doesn't begin with us trying to figure out and find him out there. A lot of us think, I want to find God. I need to go out and find him. He's out there, so I need to pursue. Well, it begins actually with his call to us, not my pursuit of him. He was walking, this is in Matthew 4, the first book of the New Testament, where he's walking and he sees some fishermen, and he goes up to them and he says, "Come, follow me, and I'll teach you to fish for people." And immediately they dropped their nets and they started to follow him. And that happened with a few others and a few others. And ultimately he had these 12 that he chose from among his disciples. The word disciple actually means follower. It means learner. Jesus as rabbi, as teacher, we follow the teacher. And so these disciples were more than just the 12. He chose the 12 from among men and women that followed him. All these people started following him. And it began with his call. Now, what's really important to know is the call was not limited to those people that he walked by as they're sitting in their fishing boats. It's clear that the call is for all of us, is for anyone. Yes, it's God that woos us. It's God that softens our heart to receive his call. But it's still the call of Jesus. It says, Matthew 11, come to me, you who are weary. Hey, I'll give you rest. That's the call. And that's where it begins. That's the first thing. But then as people came, and then as people followed him, that's when he began to say these kind of things that we read today. So the second aspect, to follow Jesus, he tells us we have to deny ourselves. Look at Luke 9 again. Then he said to them all, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves. To deny myself. What that actually means is the trust is not to just take the fullness of myself and ask God to bless it, but it's actually to deny, to take all of what I have relied on, all of what I count on, all of what I believe I am, and I deny that. I put it in the background. I offer that as a gift to him as I get in the wheelbarrow. In other words, to deny myself is to put myself in the background as I follow him. Jesus makes it quite clear. We cannot follow him on our terms because he knows that when we follow him on our terms, we're not following him at all. We're following ourselves, and we're inviting him to follow us. The great thing about Jesus Christ, God himself, who entered creation, God himself who entered creation, he says, I love you, I know you, I've created you. I came, yes, to heal you, to give you hope, to give you a calling, but it only works when you recognize that you got to follow me. Deny yourself. Quit following yourself. Everything we've learned, you guys, especially in our culture, is that we are the ones that create our own destiny. And then so many of us approach Christ by asking him to bless our destiny. No. We must deny ourselves as we follow him. Place him first. Place all of our dreams and hold them lightly into his hands. Well, when he started to talk about this, he used weird metaphors. Chapter 14, if anyone comes to me, we just read it, and ready, does not hate. Wow. That's kind of weird. People think, Jesus is about love. What's with the hate? Does not hate mom and dad, wife or husband, and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life. Such a person cannot be my follower. Wow, you got to hate? Wait a minute, I thought Jesus said you got to love. Okay, here's the deal. If you ever worried about this, I asked several people the last couple of weeks to try to figure out how do you deal with this, and most everybody goes, I don't like to think about it. Freaks me out a little bit. What's he saying, hate? I don't get it. Okay, hate is what's called a cultural idiom. It's what we mean by a cultural idiom is the way in Semitic people used to describe the world is that they would often provide contrasts that were polar opposites. What Jesus is saying is we must deny ourselves to the point that following him supersedes any other relationship, any other loyalty. We cannot follow him if we have divided loyalties. Hate, he doesn't mean proactively to hate others. He doesn't mean to go out and cause pain. He's not talking about evaluating how much I like somebody. What he's talking about is in contrast to loyalty to him, all other loyalties take a back seat. It's this contrast. We must, in comparison to loving him and denying ourselves and following him, we must hate all things and all people only in contrast. Because ultimately, when we forge our own path, we end up creating far more damage along the way. When we trust and follow him, then he gives us the ability, as we said last week, to reflect his love and to respond to his love by loving others. But make no mistake, Jesus does raise the bar. You got a choice. You have loyalty to me or loyalty to self. And then it gets even worse. It costs us our lives. In both chapter 9 and chapter 14 and throughout his ministry, here's what he says. Whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot even be my disciple. Carry my cross. Well, in that part of the world at that time, the Romans had devised the most painful, awful capital punishment known to humanity. Crucifixion is the worst way to go. And what they would do is take political prisoners and criminals, and they would crucify them, nail them, or sometimes tie by ropes these naked bodies and put them on these crosses and line the streets with them to make sure people knew you don't mess with Romans. So if you lived at that time, we lived at that time, and we're walking the family, or we're walking, even our little kids, they would have to walk past all these naked dead bodies hanging from crosses. It was horrible. Can you imagine trying to describe that? But it simply was life. The Romans were very, very cruel in their oppression of the people that they conquered. So when Jesus uses this statement, carry your cross, everybody knew exactly what he was talking about. To carry your cross meant to not only deny myself, but deny to the point of following him even to death. He's both talking about the death he was going to die by crucifixion, but also about the cost of what it means to follow him. That's high bar. Yeah, costly. In fact, a guy wrote a book called The Cost of Discipleship in 1937, a guy named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He lived in Nazi Germany at the time, was a pastor, writer, thinker, brilliant guy. And at that time, the church, almost everybody who was a Christian, capitulated to the Nazi party. They handed their faith over to the Nazi party. So their faith in God became equated with their trust in the political system and their leaders. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer continued to scream, no! We have one loyalty. We have one to follow. That is our primary calling. And the cost of discipleship is great. In Nazi Germany in 1937, it was great. It cost many, many people their lives, as it has throughout history. It's a really different thing when we're sitting in Newport Beach or wherever you are. Maybe you're as far away as Huntington. Maybe. Wherever you are on the web or just here, what does it mean to deny myself? What does it mean to carry my cross? Wow, cost of discipleship. And a lot of times, and from a lot of my journey, that's been kind of heavy. That's kind of like, I can get knowing, I can get trusting, and I can get loving, but the cost, oh my gosh, the cost demands everything. I built a career. You're telling me I got to hand my career to him? Yeah, because guess what? He may have something new for you you haven't even imagined. It might cost you your mortgage. It might cost you what college you go to if you go to college. Might cost you some money. Might cost you a lot of time. Might cost you everything. That's what it means, deny myself and take up my cross. And there's a cost, absolutely. But what's interesting is a guy named Dallas Willard helped so many of us to understand. He was a professor at USC. He was a great teacher. He died a few years ago. He wrote a book called Spirit of the Disciplines. And in this book, he talks about Dietrich Bonhoeffer and the cost of discipleship and how so many people that are Christians or considering following Christ really wrestle with it. Boy, it's costly. You know what? Marriage is costly, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. 38 years of walking with thee has cost everything. But it's been the greatest joy, and that's what Willard points out. He talks about Dietrich Bonhoeffer's book, The Cost of Discipleship, and here's what he says. Dallas Willard, it was right to point out that one cannot be a disciple of Christ without forfeiting things normally sought in human life, and that one who pays little in the world's coinage to bear his name has reason to wonder where he or she stands with God. Get this, but the cost of non-discipleship is far greater, even when this life alone is considered, than the price paid to walk with Jesus. The cost of not following Jesus is so much greater than the cost of following Jesus. Every decision has a cost. Every yes means a no. To follow Jesus does cost us. We must deny ourselves. We must die to self. We must take up our cross and follow him. Our lives belong to him. We get in that wheelbarrow and hand him it all, knowing, believing, trusting, loving that he's going to change us from within and give us a brand new vocation and calling. Our vocation is to follow him. The cost of not doing that? Yeah, the cost is high to follow Christ. You know, the cost of not doing that is to continue to go my own way, is to make my own decisions, is to have my own dreams, is to ask God, God, I love you, now bless my agenda. God, I love you, bless my bank account. God, I love you, bless all my plans and schemes. The cost of non-discipleship leads to pain and brokenness and ultimate destruction. We can run fast and hard, we can deny it, we can hide from it, but ultimately not following Jesus is way more destructive and satisfying than following this one. Because following Jesus leads to life. Following Jesus changes everything. It leads to life. We've been taught and trained what leads to life is my accomplishments, my successes, my reputation, my power, my money, whatever it is I hold dear to myself, even my family, my children, my marriage. These are what gives us satisfaction. And Jesus says there is so much satisfaction and joy to be found in life, but it will only be found as you follow me. And you let me come in and change you and heal you and grant you a new calling to lift you up and rise you up with me, he says, as we follow him. Dee and I have had a friend, mentor for a long time, passed away a long time ago, more than 25 years ago, a man named Henry now, and talked about him a little bit before. He says in a book, Walk with Jesus, this: often I think of life as a journey to the mountaintop, where I will see at last the full beauty of my surroundings, and where I will experience myself in full possession of all my senses. But Jesus points in the other direction. Life is an increasing call to let go of desires, to let go of success, to let go of accomplishments, to give up the need to be in control, to die to the illusion of greatness. The joy and peace that Jesus offers is hidden in the descending way of the cross. There lie hope, victory, and new life, but they are given to us when we are losing all. Those who lose their life will gain it. To follow Jesus is to join him in the descending way of the cross. Let us affirm together our love for Jesus Christ by praying the words that he taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever and ever. Amen. Go seeking to know the one who knows you. Go trusting the one who has paid it all for you. Go loving the one who first loved you. Go and follow Jesus Christ.